and welcome. My name is Dina Jackson and I will be your host today. We have a very special recording from Greenstone Clinic in Muskoka, Ontario. I have two wonderful guests with me. We have Siobbham Boyer and Amy Plomp. And Amy is our head clinical therapist and Siobbham is our program director here at Greenstone, and we're doing a wonderful interview that I'm very excited about, just learning a little bit about what you both do here at Greenstone, some of the programs here, and just the general process, which I think is wonderful, both for myself but also for listeners. So I'd love to dive in right away and just find out, and feel free either of you to jump in. Just love to hear a little bit about your process and what brought you into working with people in treatment and your general interest in working in this field.
Okay, well, I had the unique opportunity about 5 years into my nursing career to start working at a residential withdrawal management center. I would help support individuals through the withdrawal process and into early recovery. And it was in this environment, this non-judgmental environment, where I was so inspired by the clients that would come in, their survival skills and their ability to sort of take every day as a new day and a new chance. And I fell in love with it. And from there, I got into community withdrawal management. So as far as in sort of the addiction mental health field, this is my 18th year doing this kind of work. Wow. Just last year brought me up into the Muskoka area and to the beautiful environment that's Greenstone.
And it's a beautiful location, very calm. I was just saying, just little things like getting out of a city scenario. Not that cities aren't great, but being able to kind of leave and just sort of notice nature and
absolutely
enjoy this beautiful summer.
Yes,
so
yes.
Welcome, Siobbham.
Yes.
Thank you. And Amy?
Yeah, so I've been here for a number of years. I actually started here as a student in one of my practicums when I was doing my master's, and this was one of the opportunities to come and do a practicum. So I went to the University of Toronto, so a lot of my colleagues were doing things in the city. And this opportunity presented itself, and I thought it was a bit outside my comfort zone because I had done more work with children and youth prior to that, some homelessness populations and more around youth employment. So I thought this would be a really great place to open my horizons. And when the moment I got here and saw the grounds, I immediately thought, I've got to be here. I've got to try this. And learning about the program and working with such skilled clinicians when I got here really pushed me outside my comfort zone, but also seeing the clients and the growth that they have here really inspired me as well to keep working here. I actually came back after I finished my studies, so that goes to show how much this place means to me. And being in an inpatient environment, you get to meet clients usually at a more intimate level than maybe in a community setting. So that's where inpatient for me has been fascinating to work in, and watching people grow so quickly, even in a short period of time, as they look at themselves and are inspired by themselves and other people. I couldn't think of a better place to be.
I like that. One of the things that I find really interesting as I'm learning more about the treatment process is that there's a lot of work with mindfulness and meditation that's incorporated into various programs. And so I'm wondering if that's something that you both incorporate into your work in any way, and if so, if you'd like to speak to that and how you incorporate that at Greenstone.
Well, I mean, just for me personally, mindfulness has been a part of my daily life for probably 20 years. Before it was sort of a bit of a catchphrase, it was sort of about just being aware, trying to be in the here and now and be present. One thing I can say about being a clinician and also sort of from a client standpoint and being sort of struggling is that it's all a bit of a roller coaster emotionally. And mindfulness sort of helps you to be here, and it helps you to sort of deal with those highs and lows and not anticipate the lows. Right. And not anticipate and sort of bring on negative thoughts and sort of helps that process quite a bit. It helps me in my daily life, and I can see it helping the clients regularly as well. Here at Greenstone, they start their day with meditation, and mindfulness is part of the practice that they do in their group therapy and their individual work. And if Amy wants to add to that at all, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mindfulness has been such a important topic when, lots of research papers are being done, and that's where I was kind of exposed to it in the beginning. And then starting my own mindfulness practice in schools and in my practice really opened my eyes to what mindfulness really meant to me. Sometimes it means, oh, you're going to feel so calm, but that actually wasn't always the experience anyway. It was actually just being able to feel whatever I was feeling in that moment. Without judgment, and having compassion for myself in those moments, which I've tried to bring into my practice now. And a lot of times when I'm sitting with a client, as I have to do that my own practice to help support them as well, particularly when we're working with crisis or really those big highs and big lows, I find mindfulness can help to just balance out that rhythm a little bit, and then really showing that compassion and non-judgmental stance. I think once the client can actually do that for themselves, it actually really helps to empower them in the moment. And we've had some really interesting people come here. We've done some sound mindfulness with drums and some other types of instruments as well. We have our spiritual therapist who does a lot of different types of practice, walking meditations and things like that, and different types of ceremonies that I've been able to be part of. And I find all of those different experiences have really helped to shift my perspective on mindfulness, and watching people grow in those experiences is really good. Yeah.
I like what you're both saying about not only do you incorporate it here for anyone who's here at Greenstone, but also in your own practice. I think that's amazing. And you're right. It does seem like a very simple thing, or you think it might be easy when you try to do it, but that's not always necessarily the case. And that a lot of those emotions do come up, and you deal with those in that moment. And on that, you were saying that so that everyone here starts their day with a meditation practice. Right, so I'm wondering with that, this is just something that interests me, and I love asking guests this. There's a lot of discussion about the journey inward, and I'm wondering, like in reference to not suppressing feelings, like feeling them as they're coming up. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, and how you may or may not incorporate that into your work here.
Well, I think that's the difference. That being in treatment, being in a supportive environment can be, because sort of living on the surface is part of that sort of negative behaviors. It's suppressing those feelings with substances, with negative behavior, with unhealthy relationships, all of those things that keep you from sort of being kind of comfortable with yourself.
Right.
And so I think that's all part of being here and being in treatment, is that sort of taking those masks off, and sort of feeling a bit exposed, and that can be a really scary process. But hopefully, that's our role, is to guide people through that in a healthy environment, and sort of, be kind and warm and sort of welcoming and supportive. Yeah.
And being kind to yourself first, like you were saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems so like you can quickly forget that. Oh yeah, I should take care of myself,
yeah.
and I can be kind to other people.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the various treatment modalities you have here. I know that there's specific ones for, like there might be one for trauma, for example, if someone was suffering from PTSD, or someone has a particular substance abuse. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking to those.
I can speak to a few of the ones. I mean, because our treatment program is, between 30 and 45 days, a lot of them are sort of briefer models, only because of the timeline we have. So there's a lot of solution focused in terms of, okay, this is where I'm coming in at, and I want to shift my life, and it's really about empowering the client to change their lifestyle, and usually a lot of the times changing the way they think about themselves, which usually helps to kind of increase their resources when they actually leave here. So one of the things that we do is, we're always thinking about the discharge plan at the same time. So that's where the solution focused comes in. But when we're working with trauma and PTSD, a lot of the skills we really start with is grounding, which is, very much tied to mindfulness. A lot of times people are coming here in a very alert or hypervigilant state. So a lot of what we do is just those basic grounding techniques of all right, come back to, July 18th of 2018 and feel the energy around you, look at the space that you're in to help soothe the body. Because what we know about trauma and PTSD is that a lot of the anxiety is held in the body. So when we incorporate those approaches with mindfulness and grounding, it's really about helping the body soothe. And usually that comes through being kind and compassionate, but also through body work. So that's why we do the yoga, or we might even go for walks on our sessions to really help to soothe that body. And progressive muscle relaxation, those kinds of things to really help the body calm itself down when it is feeling heightened, which that's what trauma does, right? It increases the anxiety we experience in the body. We also use other approaches, cognitive behavioral therapy, but we do like to incorporate the mindfulness component in that, because I don't think you can do CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy without the mindfulness component. And then we're also incorporating some cognitive processing theories as well, which is really about shifting the thoughts to hopefully more balanced beliefs about ourselves, because trauma, there's usually a lot of shame involved in that. So what we try and do is to help work through that shame or those beliefs that are really holding us stuck in our trauma, and incorporating some healthier beliefs that help them to grow and to hopefully get to a place of healing and recovery. Mm-hmm.
I find it so fascinating whenever I hear, and I've heard from so many different experts and just many yoga instructors, meditation instructors, who share that you do carry a lot of emotion in the body. And I remember the first time I learned that when I was in a yoga class, and someone said, okay, we're going to do this particular pose that releases the hips, and that there's a lot of emotion that can be stored in the hips. And people were crying, some people were
powerful.
Angry, and you don't necessarily realize.
No, you don't. No.
Right? And it's the first time you kind of get that, you're like, wow. So when you said that, and especially in anxiety, someone gave me the analogy of like a spider creating a web inside of your body. And yeah, if I could describe it physically, I suffer from anxiety, so I can definitely say that would be the best way I could describe it in a physical sense. So yeah.
Protective state, right?
Right.
Up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So with the grounding exercises that you do, you were saying sometimes you spend some time out in nature, but then also with the yoga.
Absolutely. Really it's about just getting the senses engaged in the moment. We do a lot of things around sight and smells. We try to incorporate aromatherapy. And those kinds of things to help just bring the body back to the present moment. Because oftentimes anxiety lives in the future, right? And depression lives in the past. So if we can sort of bring the body back to the moment, it can help. It's not going to take away the emotion, but it may not feel as intense. It's really about bringing that intensity down.
You're right, it does. It always lives in the future and the past, and we're always chasing those things, but we need to become here, become get right here, get present. Thank you. I would love to ask both of you about the detox program here, because from someone who I haven't been here prior to today, and I haven't been in treatment, and so for anyone who hasn't been in treatment, what does that process look like? Letting go of ideas of what people might think about it, and actually hearing from you two who see it face on.
So, it's very different than sort of the stigma around it. And because, like I say, I started my career in addiction and mental health in a residential withdrawal management, which used to be referred to as the detox, there was even more stigma then. So clients will come to us, they could be in withdrawal already, they can be impaired in the moment, and even sort of not be one of those two things, but be high risk of relapse, identifying that substance use is having problematic effect in their life. So they come to us in one of those three stages. At Greenstone, they have a private or semi-private room. It's a lovely room, very comfortable and made to feel sort of like a home environment. It's 24-hour nursing care, so we basically stabilize a person throughout their withdrawal, and that looks different for every single person. Some people come to us have been using for 25 years. Some people, this is something that just became a problem in their lives 6 months ago. So obviously the physical withdrawal from those individuals will look very different, and depending on what substance they're using as well. So we stabilize a person through that withdrawal, through the nursing care. We have nurse practitioners on site. who will assess and diagnose a client. We have Dr. Marsh, as you've met, sort of overseeing our medical program. When a client is stabilized through the process, and while they're in withdrawal, we also try to encourage movement. In the same way that, you know, when you're in a hospital stay and getting surgery, we have now learned that it's better for people to be moving and not sort of staying put and being immobilized. So we encourage people to be sort of walking the grounds if they're safe to do so, to have meals in the dining room, to start coming to groups and start interacting socially, and that can be very therapeutic for clients. So it's a minimum of 24 hours that they're in the stabilization unit, and what it looks like beyond that will really depend on their physical withdrawal.
Right.
And from there, they sort of, when they're assessed to be safe, they get moved into the programming aspect where they meet a primary therapist and get sort of really engaged in the group process.
Yeah. So they would meet you?
Yeah, oftentimes there's myself and then two of my colleagues that they will meet, but oftentimes I see them after the detox or the stabilization process. And usually the comment was, I was so nervous and so scared about it, but I felt so supported. And even though it may have been a challenge depending on the stay, oftentimes the words are, I wish I would have done this sooner, because it really
thought it
was
would be so scary.
supportive. Yeah, right? There's all these beliefs that it's going to be you know, this horrific process, but really it ends up being very supportive. And oftentimes, because we have such a close community here, a lot of the residents will support each other through the process and just validate all those feelings or all those physical withdrawals that they may be experiencing. Which tends to help them get through it.
Yeah, they get a lot of peer support from clients that are, even some that are sort of closer to the end of their treatment process, and they'll see someone new coming in and they'll sort of want to help them through it, right? Because they were just there, it was very fresh for them, and they may have had a lot of sort of ideals around, beliefs around what it looked like, and they want to help them, which is a beautiful process to watch, really. Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
I think we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you one more question. I work in the entertainment industry as a comedian and as a speaker, and I've worked with a lot of people who have struggled with substance abuse, and I'm wondering if you have a note or anything you'd like to share with someone who would like to come into treatment, any kind of a message, a way that would make it accessible for them.
Reach out to a person that you trust, a supportive person. Barring that, there's sort of general numbers that you can call if you need to get connected, even calling sort of a detox unit, or even to our detox unit. We'll always do that stuff on the phone that sort of helps somebody through that decision-making process. So yeah, if it's not a family member, then reach out to an agency or to right to a unit. There's always live people, to help.
And one of the things I would say is that then watching people who have actually reached out is the amount of support that comes out from people they wouldn't even expect from, whether it's a coworker or a friend of a friend that says, you know what, I was there at one point, or I have a family member who was there, and the amount of people that tend to come around to support really oftentimes surprises the person that has been holding it in or trying to do it on their own. But once they start to actually reach out for help, often the words I hear is, I'm surprised how many people came, and the people that I wouldn't have expected, which I think can sometimes be something that we wouldn't assume to be what's going to actually happen.
Yeah, it breaks down those walls of secrecy, right?
Right. Yeah. Which can be so dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. And we know shame and addiction oftentimes go hand in hand. So if we can move past that and empower people to reach out when they need it, it really helps to hopefully change the stigma that is out there and that is slowly changing, but just to keep going through that process.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Amy and Siobbham, for joining us today. I have many questions for you that I'm continuing to think about. But for anyone who's interested in learning more about Greenstone, you can visit Greenstone, GREENE stone.net, or on social media, Greenstone_Muskoka. Thank you both for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for listening.